The prisoner transport ship hummed through the dark space between stars. Inside its maximum security cell, Jake Miller sat perfectly still. His eyes were closed, but he wasn't sleeping. He was counting the seconds between guard rotations, counting the footsteps in the corridor, counting the vibrations in the ship's hull. The Korvax guards outside his cell chatted in their clicking language. They thought he couldn't understand them. They were wrong about many things. 3 days ago, Jake had been on Earth. On vacation, actually. First time in 2 years he'd taken a break from his duties as a Marine Corps scout sniper. He'd been fishing at his cabin in Montana when the sky lit up with strange lights. The next thing he knew, he woke up in this cell with a splitting headache and alien faces staring at him through energy barriers. The Korvax were impressive creatures, he had to admit, 7 feet tall, covered in scales that shimmered between blue and purple. 4 arms made them look dangerous, and their technology was beyond anything Earth had. But Jake had learned long ago that every enemy had weaknesses. You just had to watch and wait. "The human hasn't moved in 6 hours," one guard clicked to another. "Perhaps it's broken." "The scans show it's conscious," the second guard replied. "These primitive creatures probably enter some kind of stupor when captured. Look at it. Soft skin, only 2 arms, no natural weapons. The species report says they haven't even left their solar system yet." Jake's breathing remained steady. Let them think he was weak. Let them believe their reports. The Korvax had grabbed him because they'd detected what they called unusual energy readings when he'd been at the range the week before. They didn't know what those readings meant. They didn't know what they'd really caught. 20 years of service had taught Jake patience. 15 confirmed kills in 3 different wars had taught him precision. But it was his grandfather's stories that had taught him the most important lesson. Always let your enemy underestimate you. The ship shuddered slightly. Jake's eyes opened a fraction. That wasn't normal. He'd memorized the ship's rhythm over the past 3 days. This was something different. "Alert status," a voice crackled over the communication system. "Proximity warning, unidentified vessels approaching." The guards outside straightened, their casual posture shifting to alertness. Jake watched through barely open eyes as they checked their weapons. Some kind of energy rifles that looked like they could punch through tank armor. "Probably just debris," one guard muttered. But Jake could hear the nervousness in the clicks and whistles of their speech. Another shudder, then another. The lights flickered. "That's not debris," the second guard said, raising his weapon. An explosion somewhere in the ship sent vibrations through the floor. The lights went out completely for a second before emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in a dim red glow. Jake slowly stood up, stretching like he'd just woken up. The guards glanced at him but quickly returned their attention to the corridor. Whatever was happening, they considered it a bigger threat than one captured human. That was their second mistake. Their first had been capturing him in the first place. Pirates. It had to be pirates. Jake had overheard enough conversations to know that the Korvax were having problems with raiders hitting their transport routes. The guards had complained about being assigned to a prisoner transport instead of a warship where they could see real action. Be careful what you wish for, Jake thought. The sounds of fighting grew closer. Energy weapons discharged with sharp, crackling sounds. Korvax voices shouted orders, then screams. The 2 guards at Jake's cell shifted nervously, weapons aimed down the corridor. They'd forgotten about their prisoner entirely now. Jake tested the energy barrier of his cell. He'd been doing it subtly for days, finding its frequency, understanding its pattern. Every technology had a weakness. This one flickered slightly when the ship's power fluctuated. Like now. An explosion rocked the ship hard enough to throw one guard against the wall. The energy barrier flickered, went out, then came back at half strength. Jake moved. 20 years of muscle memory took over. He grabbed the nearest guard's weapon hand, using the alien's height against him. A quick strike to what he'd identified as a nerve cluster dropped the guard. The second guard turned, but Jake was already moving, the captured energy rifle swinging like a club. Both guards down in less than 3 seconds. Jake checked the rifle. The controls were different from Earth weapons, but the principle was the same. Point and shoot. He'd figure out the details as he went. The corridor beyond his cell was chaos. Korvax soldiers ran past, ignoring the escaped prisoner in their rush to defend against the pirates. Jake blended into the shadows, moving with practiced stealth. He needed information, a layout of the ship, location of escape pods, maybe communication equipment to send a signal to Earth, though he doubted anyone would believe him. A Korvax officer stumbled around the corner, purple blood leaking from a wound in his side. He saw Jake and raised his weapon, but his injuries made him slow. Jake's rifle spoke first. The energy beam caught the officer's center mass, dropping him instantly. "Efficient," Jake muttered, examining the weapon with new respect. The officer's uniform had what looked like a data pad. Jake grabbed it, hoping it might have ship schematics. The screen lit up at his touch, displaying symbols he couldn't read, but maps were universal. Corridors, rooms, and what looked like escape pod bays. More explosions. The ship listed to one side. Whatever pirates were attacking, they were doing serious damage. Jake moved through the ship like a ghost. His bare feet, they'd taken his boots, made no sound on the metal floors. When he encountered Korvax soldiers, he avoided them. When he met pirates, a mix of different alien species, he eliminated them. No sense in trading one captor for another. He found a storage room and liberated some equipment. The boots didn't fit right, designed for Korvax feet, but they were better than nothing. A utility belt with tools he didn't recognize. What looked like emergency rations. And most importantly, a communication device that seemed to work independently of the ship's systems. The fighting was dying down. Either the Korvax were winning or the pirates were. Either way, Jake needed to move fast. According to the map, the nearest escape pod bay was 2 decks down. Jake made his way there, avoiding 3 firefights and 2 hull breaches. The Korvax had built their ship well, but the pirates had come prepared. The escape pod bay was empty except for 2 dead guards. Jake checked the pods. Most were damaged or already launched. One remained functional. He was programming what he hoped was a course away from the battle when footsteps made him spin around, rifle raised. A pirate stood in the doorway. Not just any pirate. This one looked like a leader. Scarred, heavily armed, and wearing what appeared to be trophies from various species, including what looked disturbingly like human dog tags. The pirate said something in a language Jake didn't understand. When Jake didn't respond, the pirate switched to broken Korvax. "Human, valuable, come, no fight." Jake's finger found the trigger. "No thanks." The pirate laughed. "Stupid human. Primitive. Weak. You come or you die." Jake smiled for the first time in 3 days. Primitive. I keep hearing that word. The pirate raised his weapon. Jake was faster. The energy beam took the pirate in the head, dropping him before he could fire. But the shot attracted attention. More pirates appeared in the doorway. Jake dove for cover as energy beams filled the air where he'd been standing. He returned fire, picking his shots carefully. 1 pirate down, 2. But more kept coming. The escape pod was only 10 feet away. Jake laid down covering fire and made a run for it. A beam caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. The armor he'd taken from the Korvax officer absorbed most of it, but it still felt like getting hit with a sledgehammer. He stumbled into the pod, slapping the emergency launch button. The door started to close. A pirate appeared in the doorway, weapon raised. Jake's shot took him down, but not before the pirate's beam scorched across the pod's control panel. The pod launched, throwing Jake against the wall. Through the small viewport, he watched the battle continue. The Korvax ship was badly damaged, but still fighting. The pirate vessels circled like vultures. Then the pod's damaged controls sparked. Systems started failing. The navigation computer died. Life support flickered. Jake worked frantically, trying to reroute power, but the damage was too severe. The pod spun through space, dead in the water. Jake checked his supplies. Maybe 3 days of air if he was careful. The emergency beacon was working, but who would answer? The Korvax who'd captured him? The pirates who wanted to sell him? Someone worse? He settled back in the pilot's seat, rifle across his lap. Whatever came next, he'd be ready. He'd survived worse odds in Afghanistan, in Syria, in places the American public never heard about. Space was just another battlefield. The enemies looked different, but the rules were the same. Stay alert, stay alive, and never let them see you coming. The pod drifted through the void, its single occupant waiting with the patience of a predator. Jake Miller, United States Marine Corps scout sniper, was a long way from home, but he was still in the fight. Hours passed. The air grew thin. Jake dozed fitfully, always keeping one hand on his weapon. His shoulder ached where the energy beam had caught him, but he'd had worse. A proximity alarm woke him. Something was approaching. Jake checked the scanner. A ship, but not Korvax or pirate. Something else. The ship was sleek, predatory. It locked onto the pod with some kind of tractor beam. Jake checked his rifle. Half charge left. Not much, but it would have to do. The pod shuddered as it was drawn into the larger ship's bay. Jake positioned himself behind the pilot's seat, rifle aimed at the door. Whatever came through was getting a warm welcome. The door hissed open. Jake's finger tensed on the trigger, but nothing came through. Just silence. "Human," a voice said in perfect English. "We know you're armed. We mean no harm." Jake stayed silent. In his experience, people who said they meant no harm usually meant the opposite. "Your escape pod's distress beacon was detected by our sensors," the voice continued. "We're salvagers. We couldn't help but notice the battle. Quite impressive, taking down those pirates." "Who are you?" Jake asked, not moving from cover. "My name is Vex. I represent a consortium of free traders. We're always interested in meeting capable individuals." Jake almost laughed. Space might be full of aliens, but some things were universal. Everyone was always recruiting. "I'll pass," Jake said. "Just drop me at the nearest human-friendly port." "I'm afraid that's quite impossible," Vex said. "You're approximately 47 light-years from Earth. Without proper transport, you'll never make it home." 47 light-years. Jake processed that information. He'd known he was far from home, but hearing the actual distance was sobering. "However," Vex continued, "we might be able to arrange something, if you're willing to discuss terms." Jake considered his options. Stay in the pod and die when the air ran out, or take his chances with these salvagers. Not much of a choice. "I'm listening," he said. "Excellent. Would you mind lowering your weapon? It would make conversation so much more civilized." Jake stood slowly, keeping the rifle pointed down but ready. A figure appeared in the doorway. Humanoid, but definitely not human. Tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. It wore expensive-looking clothes and moved with casual confidence. "Ah," Vex said, examining Jake. "A soldier, clearly. The way you moved during the battle was quite professional. You were watching? We monitor all conflicts in this sector. It's good for business to know who's winning and losing." Vex gestured toward the ship's interior. "Shall we continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable? I have a proposition that might interest you." Jake followed warily, rifle still ready. The ship's interior was luxurious compared to the Korvax transport. Clean, well-maintained, with actual artwork on the walls. Vex led him to what looked like a conference room. Other figures were waiting. More aliens of various species, all watching Jake with interest. "Please sit," Vex said. "Would you like something to drink, eat?" I'm afraid we don't have human food, but our synthesizers can approximate most proteins. Jake remained standing. What do you want? Vex smiled, revealing too many teeth. Direct. I like that. Very well. We want to hire you. For what? Security, protection, occasional problem-solving. You see, the galaxy is a dangerous place. The Galactic Council maintains order in the core systems, but out here on the frontier it's more complicated. Groups like ours need capable individuals to ensure our operations run smoothly. You're criminals, Jake said flatly. Such a limiting term. We prefer independent entrepreneurs. We provide services that others cannot or will not. Sometimes that requires operating outside strict legal boundaries. Jake almost walked out right then, but 47 light years from home with no way back changed the equation. He needed resources, information, a way home. What's in it for me? He asked. Besides not dying in a damaged escape pod, we can offer payment naturally, access to better equipment, and most importantly, connections, the kind that might eventually get you home. One of the other aliens spoke up in a language Jake didn't understand. Vex responded sharply, then turned back to Jake. My colleague questions the wisdom of trusting a human, Vex explained. Your species has a certain reputation. What kind of reputation? Unpredictable, violent, primitive but cunning. The Korvax report on your species has been circulating. It describes humans as barely civilized, still fighting wars among themselves, not yet achieving faster-than-light travel. But then there are the rumors. What rumors? Vex leaned forward. That humans are more dangerous than they appear. That your military forces, while technologically inferior, are remarkably effective. That capturing a human soldier is considered either very brave or very foolish, depending on the outcome. Jake kept his expression neutral. Let them wonder. So, Vex continued, are you interested in our offer? Or shall we drop you at the nearest station to take your chances? Jake knew he was being played. Vex hadn't rescued him out of kindness. They wanted something. But for now their goals aligned with his. He needed to survive, gather intelligence, and find a way home. They needed muscle with a brain. I'll consider it, Jake said, on 3 conditions. Vex's smile widened. Negotiating already. Please continue. 1, I'm not killing innocents. You want security? Fine. You want an assassin? Find someone else. Acceptable. We have standards, despite what you might think. 2, I want full access to your information networks. Anything about Earth, human captures, or ways to get home. That can be arranged, within reason. 3, I work as a contractor, not an employee. I choose which jobs to take, and if I find a way home, I'm gone. No obligations. Vex considered this. The other aliens muttered among themselves. Finally, Vex nodded. Agreed. Though I think you'll find our arrangement mutually beneficial enough that you might not be in such a hurry to leave. Vex stood. Welcome to the crew, Mr. Miller, Jake said. No point in fake names. Jake Miller. Well, Mr. Miller, let me show you to your quarters. We'll begin with something simple. A cargo retrieval from a station in the Helix Nebula. Nothing dangerous, just a show of force to encourage prompt payment. Consider it a trial run. Jake followed Vex through the ship, memorizing the layout. He'd work with these salvagers for now, but he'd never stop looking for a way home, never stop being ready for betrayal. Because 47 light years from Earth, surrounded by aliens who saw humans as primitive curiosities, Jake Miller was still a United States Marine. Still a sniper, still dangerous, and sooner or later everyone would learn exactly what that meant. The Helix station floated in space like a metal flower, its docking arms extending in all directions. Ships of every size and configuration clustered around it, from massive freight haulers to small personal craft. Jake watched through the viewport as their ship approached, cataloging defenses, noting blind spots, counting patrol vessels. Old habits die hard. Impressive, isn't it? Vex stood beside him, 4 hands clasped behind his back. One of the largest free ports in this sector. No questions asked, as long as you can pay the docking fees. Looks like a good place to disappear, Jake observed. Or find someone who's already disappeared, which brings us to our current job. Vex handed Jake a data pad. The target is a Threnny merchant named Kolax. Owes our client considerable money. He's been hiding here for 3 weeks. Jake studied the information. The Threnny looked like oversized beetles, complete with hard shells and multiple legs. This Kolax had borrowed heavily to finance a cargo run that went bad. Now he was trying to wait out his creditors. You want me to kill him? Certainly not. Dead debtors pay no debts. We simply need to convince him that settling his obligations would be healthier than the alternatives. Vex smiled. Your appearance should be quite effective. Humans are still rare enough to be frightening to most species. Jake set down the data pad. And if he doesn't scare easily, then we explore other options. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Violence is bad for business. 2 hours later, Jake walked through the station's marketplace, drawing stares and whispers. Word of humans had spread through the galaxy, but actually seeing one was different. Parents pulled their offspring closer. Merchants watched him warily. Even the station security gave him a wide berth. He wore the armor Vex had provided, a modified set that actually fit his human frame. The energy rifle hung across his back. Legal in the Freeport, but still intimidating. A translator bud in his ear converted the dozen languages around him into English. According to Vex's information, Kolax had a weakness for gambling. The station's lower levels hosted several establishments where credits could be won or lost. Jake made his way down, noting exit routes and potential ambush points. The broken nebula was exactly what Jake expected from a frontier gambling den. Dimly lit, filled with smoke from various substances, crowded with beings trying to forget their troubles or multiply them. Jake found a corner table with good sight lines and settled in to wait. He didn't have to wait long. Kolax entered an hour later, trying to look inconspicuous and failing miserably. The Threnny's shell showed signs of stress, cracks that hadn't been properly treated, a dull color that suggested poor nutrition. Running from debts was hard on the body, no matter what species you were. Jake watched Kolax lose 3 hands of something that looked like poker, played with holographic cards. The Threnny's credit balance dropped with each loss. Desperation made people stupid, and Kolax was very desperate. Time to work. Jake stood and walked to Kolax's table. Conversation stopped. Every eye in the place tracked the human's movement. Kolax, Jake said quietly. We need to talk. The Threnny's compound eyes widened. His translator sputtered, trying to process the human's words. I don't know you. No, but you know who sent me. Jake pulled out a chair and sat down, keeping his hands visible but ready. You have 2 choices. Come with me now, quietly, and discuss payment arrangements. Or we can do this the hard way. I don't have the money. Kolax's voice rose to a painful screech. The cargo was lost. Pirates took everything. Not my problem. Jake leaned forward slightly. My employer wants his investment back. With interest. You can work out a payment plan or... He let the sentence hang. Kolax looked around frantically, maybe hoping for help. But this was a free port. Nobody interfered in business disputes. The other gamblers had already moved away, not wanting to be caught in potential crossfire. Please, Kolax whined. I need more time. Just a few more days. I have a deal coming through. No more time. Jake stood. Let's go. That's when everything went wrong. 4 figures burst through the entrance, weapons drawn, not station security. These were professionals, mercenaries, from the look of their matched armor and coordinated movement. They spread out, covering angles like they'd done this before. Nobody move! The leader, a reptilian Sauran, swept his rifle across the room. "We're here for the Threnny. Anyone interferes, they die." Competing creditors. Jake almost smiled. This job just got more interesting. The Sauran noticed Jake and did a double take. "A human? Here?" He barked something in his native language, and his team shifted positions, two of them focusing on Jake. "Back away from our target, primitive." There was that word again. Primitive. Jake raised his hands slowly, as if surrendering. The mercenaries relaxed slightly. Just another human, probably a hired thug with no real training. Easy to handle. "I'm just here for a drink," Jake said mildly. "No trouble from me." The Sauron gestured with his rifle. "Then sit down and stay quiet." Jake sat. The mercenaries moved toward Kolax, who was practically vibrating with fear. One of them produced restraints. Jake counted. 4 hostiles. 2 watching him, 2 securing the target, range about 15 feet. His rifle was slung across his back, hard to reach quickly. But the table had possibilities. The leader made a mistake. He turned his back on Jake to grab Kolax, just for a second, but a second was all Jake needed. The heavy table flipped up, becoming a shield. Jake rolled behind it as energy beams seared the air where he'd been. His rifle came free in a smooth motion. The first shot took one of the mercenaries, watching him center mass. Military-grade armor absorbed some of it, but the alien went down. Jake was already moving, using the chaos and screaming civilians as cover. The second watcher tried to track him but couldn't get a clear shot through the panicking crowd. Jake's beam caught him in the leg, dropping him with a howl of pain. 2 down, 2 to go. The leader spun around, looking for the human who'd just taken out half his team. Jake was already gone, circling through the smoke and confusion. 20 years of urban warfare experience against an alien who'd probably never faced a human soldier. Not even close to a fair fight. The 4th mercenary made the fatal error of focusing on where Jake had been instead of where he was going. Jake's shot took him in the side, punching through a gap in his armor. The alien collapsed, weapon clattering across the floor. That left the leader. The Sauran had good instincts, diving for cover and laying down suppressing fire. Energy beams turned tables to slag, sent civilians screaming for exits. But Jake wasn't there anymore. He'd displaced the moment he'd fired, moving to the Sauran's blind spot. The alien was good, but he was thinking in 2 dimensions. Humans had been fighting in cities for thousands of years. They'd learned to use every angle, every surface, every shadow. Jake came over the bar like a ghost, rifle already aimed. The Sauran saw him at the last second, tried to bring his weapon around. Too slow. The beam caught the Sauran in the chest. His armor held for a moment, then failed. He went down hard, weapon spinning away. The whole fight had taken less than 30 seconds. Jake kicked the weapons away from the downed mercenaries, then checked Kolax. The Threnny had fainted. Probably for the best. Station security finally arrived, weapons drawn, shouting orders in multiple languages. Jake set his rifle on the ground and raised his hands. No point in fighting the locals. "Self-defense," he said calmly. "They shot first. Plenty of witnesses." The security chief, a 4-armed Korvax that reminded Jake uncomfortably of his former captors, surveyed the scene. 4 professional mercenaries down, taken out by a single human. The chief's scales shifted color. What Jake had learned was a sign of deep thought. "You're the human working with Vex," the chief said. It wasn't a question. "I'm a security contractor," Jake replied. "These individuals interfered with a legitimate business discussion." The chief made a sound that might have been a laugh. Legitimate, of course. He gestured to his officers. "Take the wounded to medical. Confiscate the weapons. And someone wake up that Threnny." He turned back to Jake. "Your reputation precedes you, human. The footage from the Korvax transport has been circulating. A prisoner who escaped during a pirate attack, leaving a trail of bodies." The chief leaned closer. "I wonder what else you're capable of." Jake met the alien's 4 eyes steadily. "Hopefully you'll never have to find out." Another maybe laugh. Collect your target and go. But human? Try not to turn my station into a war zone. Bad for business. Jake hauled the semi-conscious Colax to his feet. The Threnny babbled apologies and promises all the way back to Vex's ship. Jake tuned him out, thinking about what the security chief had said. His escape from the Korvax was already becoming known. That could be useful, or it could be trouble. Probably both. Vex was waiting in the cargo bay, along with several crew members. They watched Jake escort Colax inside with expressions ranging from surprise to calculation. 4 mercenaries, Vex said. In under 30 seconds, the station's security footage is already being traded on the dark networks. They were in my way, Jake said simply. Yes, I imagine they were. Vex gestured to his crew. Take our guest to the conference room. Make him comfortable. We have financial matters to discuss. As Colax was led away, still promising to pay everything back with interest, Vex turned to Jake. That was educational. The combat reports about humans appear to be understated. We had to learn to fight, Jake said. No claws, no armor, no natural weapons. Just our brains and whatever we could build. Evolution through conflict. Fascinating. Vex started walking toward the bridge. Your performance has raised your value considerably. I have another proposition for you. Here it comes, Jake thought. The real job. The gambling den had been a test. There's a facility in the Karen system, Vex continued. A research station studying pre-FTL species. Very secret, very secure. My sources indicate they recently acquired some interesting specimens. Let me guess. Humans. 3 of them, to be precise. Grabbed from different parts of your world. The researchers are trying to understand human adaptability and combat effectiveness. Vex stopped at a viewport, looking out at the stars. Retrieving them would be challenging. The station is run by the Hegemony. Jake knew that name. The Hegemony controlled a large section of the galaxy, ruled by a species that considered themselves superior to all others. They had the technology to back up their arrogance. Why do you care about captured humans? I don't. But you do. And the Hegemony has something I want. Help me get it, and I'll help you rescue your people. Vex smiled. Consider it mutual benefit. Jake weighed the offer. 3 humans in alien hands being studied like lab rats. He couldn't leave them there. But this was also clearly a trap of sorts. Vex was using Jake's humanity against him. What's your real angle? Jake asked. The research station has developed new shield technology. Revolutionary stuff. Worth a fortune to the right buyer. You help me acquire the specifications. I help you save your fellow humans. Everyone wins. Except the Hegemony. Well, yes, except them. Vex's smile widened. So, are you interested? Jake thought about the 3 humans, probably terrified, definitely in danger. He thought about the technology that kept humanity trapped in one solar system, while the rest of the galaxy moved freely among the stars. He thought about 47 light years and the long journey home. I'll need more information, he said. Station layout, security details, extraction plans. Of course. I'll have everything sent to your quarters. Vex paused. Oh, and Mr. Miller? That thing you did in the gambling den, turning the table into a shield? None of the combat footage I've seen showed humans doing that. Improvisation in the moment. Quite remarkable, Jake shrugged. We call it adapting to the situation. Marines are good at it. Marines. Vex tested the word. Your military forces have colorful names. I look forward to seeing more adaptation. As Jake headed to his quarters, he wondered what he'd gotten himself into. A rescue mission into a heavily defended research station run by the galaxy's most arrogant species. His grandfather would have called it a suicide run. But his grandfather had also said something else. Marines don't leave anyone behind. The data package was waiting in his quarters. Jake pulled it up on the wall display and started studying. The station hung in space like a metal spider, all angles and extensions. Security looked tight. Energy shields, weapon platforms, patrol ships. The hegemony didn't take chances, but every defense had weaknesses. Jake had found them in Taliban mountain strongholds. He'd found them in fortified compounds in Syria. He'd find them here. The human captives were listed in the research notes. 2 males, 1 female, taken from different continents. The researchers were particularly interested in human stress responses and learning capabilities. The test descriptions made Jake's jaw clench. He pulled up more data: guard rotations, shift changes, maintenance schedules. Slowly, a plan began to form. It was risky, probably crazy, but possible. Jake smiled grimly. The hegemony thought they were studying primitive humans, learning their weaknesses. They were about to get a different kind of education. A knock at his door interrupted his planning. Jake opened it to find one of Vex's crew, a 6-legged insectoid whose name he couldn't pronounce. "Message from Vex," the alien said. "We've received intelligence that the hegemony is planning to transfer the human specimens to a more secure facility. If we're going to act, it needs to be within the next 72 hours. 3 days. Jake looked back at the station schematic. 3 days to plan and execute a raid on one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy. "Tell Vex I'll be ready," Jake said. The insectoid left. Jake returned to his planning, mind already working through scenarios. The hegemony had technology, numbers, and home field advantage. But Jake had something they didn't expect. 20 years of special operations experience, a sniper's patience, and the absolute determination to bring those people home. The galaxy thought humans were primitive, weak, easy prey. Time to teach them different. Jake pulled up the station plans again, marking entry points, plotting approaches. Somewhere in that metal spider, 3 humans were counting on rescue they didn't even know was coming. They wouldn't be disappointed. The hegemony had made a critical error. They'd captured humans thinking they were taking specimens. But humans weren't specimens. They were survivors, fighters. And they had something no amount of advanced technology could match. They had each other. Jake began making equipment lists. He'd need specific gear, some of which might be hard to acquire. But Vex had connections, and Jake had proven his worth. Time to see how far that would take him. 72 hours. Jake had conducted operations with less prep time against enemies who knew he was coming. The hegemony wouldn't even know what hit them until it was too late. He opened a new file and began typing. Operation parameters, equipment requirements, contingency plans. By the time he was done, he had 30 pages of detailed preparation. Vex wanted shield technology. Jake wanted to rescue the captives. Both goals were achievable if everything went right, and if it went wrong, well, Jake had survived when operations went wrong before. Part of being a Marine was adapting when the plan met reality and lost. He leaned back in his chair, studying the fortress he was about to assault. Somewhere behind those walls and shields, 3 humans were waiting. They didn't know Jake Miller existed. They didn't know the United States Marine Corps had a very long reach, even 47 light-years from home. But they were about to find out. The mission clock in Jake's head started counting down. 72 hours to prepare. Then the hegemony would learn what one motivated human could do with the right tools and the wrong attitude. Jake smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Class was about to be in session. The maintenance shuttle drifted toward the hegemony research station like a piece of space debris. Inside, Jake checked his equipment one final time. The modified maintenance suit hid his human shape reasonably well, though he'd had to adjust the limb proportions to match the 4-armed Korvax workers who serviced the station. "Remember," Vex's voice crackled through the comm, "you have 40 minutes before the next maintenance crew is scheduled. After that, they'll know something's wrong. Copy that. Jake sealed the helmet, watching the station grow larger through the viewport. The facility looked even more imposing up close. Shield generators hummed with barely contained energy. Weapon turrets tracked passing vessels with mechanical precision, but Jake had spotted the weakness in their defense. The hegemony were so confident in their shields and weapons that they'd grown complacent about physical security. The maintenance ports were barely monitored. After all, who would be stupid enough to attack a hegemony facility? A human would. Specifically, a Marine sniper who'd spent years infiltrating positions everyone said were impossible to breach. The shuttle docked with a soft thump. Jake waited for the pressure to equalize, then opened the hatch. The maintenance bay was empty, just as the schedule had indicated. Shift change had been 20 minutes ago. The next patrol wouldn't come through for another 15. Jake moved quickly but carefully through the corridors, following the route he'd memorized. The maintenance workers he passed barely glanced at him, just another Korvax doing routine service. The suit's false arms moved convincingly with each step. He reached the first security checkpoint. 2 guards, both from the hegemony's warrior caste, 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating that could stop most small arms fire. Jake had studied their weak points, joints, eyes, the soft tissue under the jaw, but fighting wasn't the plan, not yet. Jake presented the forged maintenance credentials. One guard scanned them, while the other watched Jake with the bored attention of someone who'd stood too many watches. The scanner beeped green. They waved him through. The research section was deeper in the station, past 2 more checkpoints. Jake maintained the steady pace of a worker who belonged there. Confidence was 9/10 of infiltration. Act like you're supposed to be there, and most people won't question it. The 3rd checkpoint was different. Bioscanners that would detect his human physiology. Jake had expected this. He pulled out a small device Vex's tech specialist had provided, a scanner spoofer that would broadcast false readings for about 30 seconds. Jake triggered the device and walked through. The scanner accepted the false data, reading him as a standard Korvax. The guards didn't even look up from their conversation. 25 minutes left. The holding cells were in the restricted section. Jake found an access terminal and plugged in another device. The virus would create a feedback loop in the security cameras, showing empty corridors for the next hour. Crude but effective. He shed the maintenance suit in a supply closet, revealing the combat armor underneath. No more pretense. Time to be what he really was, a hunter in enemy territory. The first guard outside the holding cells never saw him coming. Jake dropped from a ventilation grate, driving an armor-piercing blade between the armor plates. The guard fell silently. Jake dragged the body into an alcove and kept moving. 3 more guards at the cell block entrance. Jake pulled a small sphere from his belt. A flashbang grenade modified with alien tech. The explosion of light and sound sent the guards reeling. Jake moved through them like death itself. Precise strikes to vulnerable points. No wasted motion, no hesitation. In 20 seconds, all 3 were down. Jake grabbed a key card and entered the cell block. The humans were in separate cells, energy barriers humming. Jake saw them and felt his anger spike. They looked bad, thin, bruised, with the hollow eyes of people who'd given up hope. 2 men and 1 woman, as the intelligence had indicated. One man was older, maybe 60s, with gray hair and a professor's bearing. The second man was younger, built like a linebacker, with prison tattoos visible through his torn shirt. The woman looked to be in her 30s, athletic build, watching Jake with sharp intelligence despite her condition. They all stared as Jake approached. A figure in alien combat armor wasn't what they'd expected to see. "Stand back from the barriers," Jake said in English. The 3 humans jumped at hearing their own language. The woman recovered first. "Who are you?" "Rescue party. We're leaving in 60 seconds. Jake started working on the barrier controls. The hegemony's technology was advanced, but Vex's tools were designed for exactly this kind of work. The first barrier fell. The older man stumbled out, legs weak from confinement. "I'm Dr. Marcus Webb," he said. "Biologist. They took me from my lab at Berkeley." "Jake Miller, Marines. Save the introductions for later." The second barrier fell. The big man came out swinging, reflexes still sharp despite captivity. "Roy Thompson," he growled. "Detroit! These alien assholes grabbed me right out of county lockup." The third barrier dropped. The woman stepped out carefully, testing her balance. "Sarah Chen, FBI," she said. "Disappeared during an investigation in Seattle." She looked at Jake's armor. "Since when does the military have this kind of tech?" "They don't. I'll explain later. Right now we move." Jake handed each of them a small device. "Emergency beacons. If we get separated, trigger these. Someone will find you." He led them out of the cell block, weapon ready. 15 minutes left before someone noticed the missing maintenance shuttle. They made it 50 meters before the alarm started. "So much for 40 minutes, Jake muttered. "Stay close. Do exactly what I say." Red lights bathed the corridors. Hegemony warriors poured from side passages, weapons drawn. Jake pushed the humans into an alcove and opened fire. His energy rifle, modified by Vex's techs, punched through Hegemony armor like paper. "Holy shit," Roy breathed. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" "Fallujah, Kandahar. Few other places." Jake dropped 2 more warriors. "We need to move, now." They ran. Jake led them through service corridors and maintenance shafts, using the route he'd memorized. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. The Hegemony were bringing serious firepower. "Why are they so interested in us?" Dr. Webb gasped as they climbed another ladder. "Your test subjects," Jake explained, boosting Sarah up. "They want to understand human adaptability. Guess they got more than they bargained for." They emerged in a cargo bay. Jake's escape route, a captured Hegemony shuttle, sat 20 meters away. Between them and freedom stood a full squad of warriors. Jake did the math. 12 hostiles, 3 civilians to protect. Not good odds. "When I start shooting, run for the shuttle," he told the others. "Don't stop. Don't look back." "You can't take them all," Sarah protested. Jake smiled grimly. "Watch me." He'd been holding back, trying to keep a low profile. But low-profile time was over. Time to show the Hegemony what a Marine Scout sniper could really do. Jake burst from cover, rifle singing. His first 3 shots dropped 3 warriors before they could react. He rolled behind a cargo container as return fire melted the deck where he'd been standing. The humans ran. Jake kept the warriors' attention, moving constantly, never giving them a stationary target. Another warrior down, another. They were good, but they were used to fighting conventional battles. Stand-up fights with clear lines. Jake had learned his trade in places where the enemy could be anywhere. Where a sniper had to be ghost, guardian, and killer all at once. Where missing a shot meant your brothers died. He didn't miss. 7 down. 5 to go. Jake's rifle overheated. He dropped it and pulled his sidearm, a heavy pistol that fired armor-piercing rounds. Less range, but just as deadly in the right hands. A warrior tried to flank him. Jake put 2 rounds through the alien's helmet. Another rushed his position. Jake sidestepped, using the alien's momentum against him, driving a knife between armor plates. 3 left. They'd formed a defensive position, laying down covering fire. Smart, but not smart enough. Jake pulled his last grenade. Not a flashbang this time. This was Vex's special gift, a micro-nuke about the size of a baseball. Jake armed it and threw. The explosion shook the entire bay. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained of the 3 warriors but scattered armor fragments. "Clear!" Jake shouted. "Move, move, move!" The humans were already at the shuttle. Sarah had figured out the basic controls. FBI training apparently included some useful skills. The engines were warming up. Jake sprinted across the bay as more warriors poured in. Energy beams sizzled past him. He dove through the shuttle's closing hatch as Sarah punched the throttle. The shuttle burst from the bay into open space. Behind them, the station's weapons came online. Massive turrets swiveled to track them. "They're going to blow us out of the sky!" Dr. Webb shouted. "No," Jake said, checking his chronometer. "They're not." The station's lights flickered, then died. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but the weapons remained dark. Vex's virus had reached the main power grid right on schedule. "Hang on," Sarah called from the pilot's seat. "Company coming?" Hegemony patrol ships were closing in. The shuttle had shields, but not enough to withstand sustained fire from military vessels. That's when Vex's ship appeared. The sleek vessel dropped out of hyperspace practically on top of them. Weapons ports opened, and Vex's gunners showed they knew their business. 2 patrol ships exploded. The others scattered, suddenly on the defensive. "Shuttle! This is Vex," the comm crackled. "Dock immediately. We have what we came for." Sarah guided the shuttle into Vex's docking bay. The moment they were aboard, Jake felt the ship jump to hyperspace. They were away clean. The 3 rescued humans sat in the shuttle, staring at Jake. He'd removed his helmet, revealing a very human face streaked with sweat and smoke residue. "You came for us," Dr. Webb said quietly. "Across space, into an alien fortress. Why?" Jake met each of their eyes. "Because you're human. Because you were in trouble. Because that's what we do." "Who's we?" Roy asked. "Marines, Americans, humans, take your pick." Jake stood, suddenly feeling every bruise and strain. "Come on, let's get you checked by medical. Then we need to talk about getting you home." As they left the shuttle, Sarah caught Jake's arm. "In the bay. I've seen combat footage, military operations, but that was..." She shook her head. "They never stood a chance, did they? They made 2 mistakes," Jake said. "They took humans, and they underestimated us." "What was their second mistake?" Jake's expression hardened. "They took Americans, and one of them happened to be in the wrong place at the right time to do something about it." Medical checked the 3 rescues. Malnutrition, some minor injuries, psychological trauma from captivity, but they'd recover. Humans were tough that way. Jake found Vex in his office, examining a data crystal that glowed with soft blue light. "The shield specifications," Vex said happily. "Worth a fortune, and you rescued your people. A successful operation all around." "About that," Jake said. "Those 3 need to get home, back to Earth." "Ah." Vex's smile faded. "That's complicated. Earth is in Korvax territory. They don't appreciate human ships in their space, and after your escape, they're even more paranoid about human military personnel." "I don't care what they appreciate. Those people have families, lives. They need to go home." Vex studied Jake. "You know, most species would have written them off. 3 individuals against the safety of billions, not worth the risk." "Good thing we're not most species." "Indeed." Vex turned the data crystal over in his hands. "I might have a solution. This technology is valuable enough to buy safe passage through Korvax space. A trade delegation, perhaps. Perfectly legitimate." "You'd do that? For my valuable security contractor?" "Of course. Though I confess to ulterior motives. Your rescue has been recorded. The footage of one human defeating multiple hegemony warriors is already spreading through certain networks." Vex smiled. "Do you have any idea what your actions today have done?" Jake shrugged. "Saved 3 people? Started a legend. The galaxy has been told humans are primitive, weak, easy prey. But now they've seen what one trained human can do. The hegemony are demanding answers. The Korvax are reviewing their threat assessments. Other species are asking questions." "Questions like what?" "Like what happens when Earth achieves faster-than-light travel? What happens when instead of capturing individual humans, they face entire armies? What happens when the primitives decide they've had enough of being everyone's lab rats?" Jake thought about that. One Marine had infiltrated a maximum security station and rescued 3 captives. What could a full battalion do? What would happen when humanity took its place among the stars, not as subjects to be studied, but as equals to be respected or feared? The shield technology, Jake said. Can it be adapted for Earth ships? With some modification, yes. Why? Because if we're going to take our place out here, we need every advantage we can get, and I want Earth to have options when the galaxy comes calling again. Vex laughed. Thinking strategically, I approve. Yes, I think we can arrange for certain technical specifications to find their way to Earth. Consider it a gift. From one entrepreneur to a planet of potential entrepreneurs. Over the next few days, Jake spent time with the 3 rescued humans. Dr. Webb was fascinated by the alien technology, taking notes on everything. Roy turned out to have a sharp mind under the tough exterior, quickly grasping the political implications of human-alien contact. Sarah worked with Jake on tactical analysis, her FBI training translating well to understanding alien security protocols. They were adapting, just like humans always did. So what now? Sarah asked one evening as they watched stars streak by through a viewport. We go home and pretend this never happened? You go home and prepare, Jake corrected. Tell who you can trust. Earth needs to know what's out here, the good and the bad. What about you? Jake considered. 47 light years from home, but out here, he could make a difference. Gather intelligence, build alliances, prepare the way for when humanity was ready. I've got work to do, he said. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks through a series of hyperspace jumps. Jake used the time to train the others in basic combat techniques, just in case. He also worked with Vex to ensure the shield technology would reach the right hands on Earth. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Earth hung in the distance. Blue and perfect. Home. Beautiful, Dr. Webb breathed. Yeah, Jake agreed. She is. Vex had arranged everything. A small shuttle, emissions masked to avoid Korvax patrols, a landing site in rural Montana, not far from where Jake had been taken, transport waiting to get the 3 home safely. As they prepared to board the shuttle, each of them shook Jake's hand. Thank you, Dr. Webb said simply, for not leaving us behind. Roy gripped Jake's hand firmly. You ever need backup, Marine, you call me. I owe you. Sarah was last. You're not coming with us. It wasn't a question. Jake shook his head. My war's not over. Maybe it's just beginning, but you 3 have a job now. Prepare Earth, because they know about us now, and they'll be coming. How do we prepare for something like that? Jake smiled. Same way humans always have. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. And when they come, we'll be ready. The shuttle launched. Jake watched it disappear into Earth's atmosphere, carrying 3 humans home with a story no one would believe. Yet, Vex appeared beside him. Regrets? None. Just determination. Jake turned away from the viewport. So, what's our next job? I have several options. The hegemony want you dead, of course. The Korvax want you captured. Several criminal organizations want to hire you. You've become quite famous, Mr. Miller. Good. Let them know humans are here. Let them know we're not prey. Jake headed for the bridge. And let them know that Earth has defenders, even 47 light years away. 6 months later, a package appeared on the desk of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. No return address. No delivery record, just a data crystal and a note. From a Marine far from home, Semper Fi. The crystal contained complete specifications for shield technology decades ahead of anything on Earth. It also contained detailed intelligence on dozens of alien species, their capabilities, their weaknesses, and their attitudes toward humanity. At the bottom was a personal message. We are not alone. We are not helpless. We are not prey. Prepare, adapt, overcome. When they come, Show them what Marines are made of. Show them what Americans can do. Show them why humans survive. Gunnery Sergeant Jake Miller, USMC. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans were primitive by galactic standards. Their technology was inferior. Their bodies were fragile. But they had something the galaxy had forgotten in its comfortable superiority. They had the warrior spirit, the refusal to quit, the ability to turn any situation to their advantage. They had Marines, and as any enemy of America had learned over the centuries, that made all the difference. Somewhere among the stars, Jake Miller continued his work. One human, one Marine, one sniper, making the galaxy safe for when humanity finally took its place among the stars, not as subjects or specimens, but as equals, as warriors, as survivors, as humans.